It's been almost a year since movie distribution changed a whole lot, and movies that were going to go to the theaters are skipping the theaters and are coming straight to streaming and straight to VOD. So down in the comments, I want to hear, what is your favorite movie that you've rented recently on VOD? Now, I don't mean movies that got released straight to Netflix, movies that got released on Hulu that were going to have theatrical runs and stuff like that. I mean movies that were going to be in the theaters and then they were like, okay, you can see it, but you've got to pay us a premium. Which of those have you done, and which of those have you been happy with? Because today we're going to talk about Freaky, a movie that was in some theaters for like 2 weeks before its VOD date, and then was released on VOD for I think like $20, which is a premium price for a rental, but you are seeing it. You are seeing a new release theatrical movie. We're going to talk about whether I think that's worth it or not. Hello, this is Project Black T-Shirt, the channel where we take a new release horror movie or a reissue horror movie and then pair it with a piece of horror literature or a horror comic book or a horror nonfiction book that you will enjoy reading if you like that movie. And I'm Adam Caesar. I am the author of a bunch of books, but most recently, I'm the author of Clown in the Cornfield. Holidays are coming up, so the young people in your life, the old people in your life, the middle-aged people in your life, they called me up and they said there's one thing that they want for the holidays. They want this wrapped and under the tree. This is a Clown in the Cornfield. Go check it out. Clive Barker called me, an author who knows how to make us afraid. I don't know if that's true or not, but this is a good book and you should go get it. Thank you, and I appreciate your support. So today we're discussing Freaky, a movie that I've been looking forward to for a very, very long time, ever since I heard the tagline, or ever since I even heard the title. The original title of this movie was Freaky Friday the 13th, and they've changed it because Lord knows how litigious the folks that own or claim to own or once owned the Friday the 13th series are. They changed it to shorten it to just Freaky. But I love that original title because it really gives you the whole movie, the whole pitch in a title. It is a body swap comedy, not unlike Freaky Friday, but instead of a young woman trading places with her mother, she trades bodies with a vicious slasher serial killer, here played by Vince Vaughn. And the young woman, the high school girl here, our protagonist, Millie, is played by Catherine Newton. This is director Christopher Landon's third movie, almost in like a loose trilogy of these slasher movies that are also high concept teen comedies. His first one was Happy Death Day, and then the sequel, Happy Death Day to You, that kind of like doubled down on the time travel, quantum physics shenanigans. And now he has turned his eye to the body swap. And this was a movie where I just wasn't sure what I was getting, even though the title is very explicit, even though the concept is very, very clearly, you can see how they'd hang a bunch of jokes on that idea. It's one of those movies where, okay, well, Happy Death Day was great, but it was PG-13, and it had this great young adult teen movie feeling that kind of permeated the whole thing, like, just the adventure of college as a young person, and all this kind of these great jokes that come out of that. But it did feel the slasher portions of it were really not the main attraction. As much as I like that movie, they didn't feel like, it didn't feel overly vicious. The kills didn't seem overly crazy. It was PG-13, so it was not overly gory. With this movie, knowing that it was R-rated, knowing that it has like a bigger star kind of at the center of it, knowing that it was going to be a comedy, you really just entered into it wondering, what portion of everything are we going to get? What portion of slasher are we going to get? What portion of fish out of water body swap comedy are we going to get? What portion of, which is now kind of Christopher Landon's thing, for lack of a better term, is that he takes these movies that could be schlocky or could be overly irreverent, and then he puts a good amount of heart in them. The first two Happy Death Day movies are actually very very sweet in a way. Very there's like tearjerker moments to them, and he does that again in this one. And it really does succeed on every level. Plus, you get this extra dose of gore and that isn't present in the other movies that really, at least for me, really worked. It's a movie that's really feels very smartly put together because it knows exactly how long its audience is going to not be bored by a certain flavor of like the mashup that it is. It starts off with a bang because it starts off, we see Vince Vaughn's slasher at kind of full capacity. He's kind of Jason Voorhees meets Joe Spinell in Maniac. It's kind of like the through line for this guy. He's very physical slasher. Feels very inspired by the not only Friday the 13th, but like the Kane Hodder version of the character. Down to even Vince Vaughn does the head tilt. It's got a great opening where he just decimates a house full of teens. And it really sets the tone of these are exaggerated kills, but they are very gory kills, and some of them are quite vicious, which really does set stakes in a movie that is pretty light throughout. It is a movie that is never not zippy and fun, and you're laughing along with it, even when people are getting murdered. But we'll get to that in a second. So it starts off with that, and then we take a pretty good chunk of time establishing Millie's background and who she is as a character, and we have this little 20-minute slice of a pretty, regular, with no dead bodies, teen comedy. It's coming of age. She has, her father's passed away. Her mom is slowly slipping into alcoholism, which at times feels like it might be a little nod to Nancy's mom in Nightmare on Elm Street. There's the boy she likes. There's the fact that she's a loser and she's got her two friends that they're very, she has a tight-knit friend group, but like the rest of the school doesn't like her. And it's setting up that kind of never been kissed, she's all that nerdy girl turns popular hot girl. But the vehicle for doing that is then they switch bodies, and Vince Vaughn, once he hilariously, the psycho killer that inhabits Millie's body has like a better sense of style than she has, is able to do her makeup better, picks out a cool leather jacket for her, and just starts dismantling her classmates. And it really walks this line between things that horror fans really enjoy about slashers that's kind of hard to get your casual person into, the idea that you can kind of revel in like a good gore gag, even though like you're like, well, I shouldn't really be rooting for these characters to die. Freaky does this tightrope walk where it's a lot of the victims that Vince Vaughn's character through Catherine Newton is taking out are really bad. And it takes great pains to be like, these people are a-holes, and when they get their comeuppance, it's incredibly satisfying. But it never forgets that you don't want to see Millie's friends get hurt, you don't want to see Millie get hurt, you don't want to see her family get hurt, and that's always this ever-present danger that kind of hangs over it, but never gets too oppressive. It's a really, tonally, a very adept movie because you do have to deal with a lot of things that don't normally go together. And the movie has this kind of, like Happy Death Day to a certain extent, it has this very poppy, colorful, nice-looking look and sheen to the whole thing. The cinematographer in this is actually Laurie Rose, the kind of constant collaborator of Ben Wheatley when Ben Wheatley makes movies. But this is a very different looking kind of movie for him. And I really was taken with how it gives you all the benefit of a teen movie, all the like kind of goofiness of like an American Pie plus murder. It's really fun, and then if it were just that kind of, it does both of these genres well. It would be like the kind of movie where you're like, okay, that was fun, and you instantly forget about it. But it's a few days later now. I just watched this over the weekend, and I'm still thinking about it because I think there's this strong thematic through line to it that even though it's played broad, even though this stuff is like kind of super obvious, it's still good and it's still well done and well thought out. How, as horrible as like going on a killing spree is, it is like a certain like amount of liberation when she's in Vince Vaughn's body, and when Vince Vaughn is really hamming it up here, but not like to the point where it's obnoxious, to the point where it's just a really good, really lively, really committed performance with a lot of buy-in. Like, she's exploring what it's like to be, a tall guy who's able to kind of physically impose on people, and then he's learning the shortcomings of being in her body, and it does a lot of stuff it didn't have to do. There were a lot of things that are super obvious jokes to do with this that it does, and it does well, and it puts enough of a spin on them that you're like, this is great. But you've got that extra little layer of self-discovery and self-confidence that really, really works. It really, really it feels like a good kind of message movie in a certain way. And then there's stuff with the mom that really lands, that is really impactful. I think all of that stuff is even better than it was in the Happy Death Day movies, and I really, really love the first one of those. But I think everything just works even better here. And because everything's working at such a high level, and because I really, really, really loved and was shocked by how good the practical gore is and stuff like that, where there are little hiccups, like there's 90% practical gore effects, and not to be the guy on the internet that's like, oh, slasher movies should be all practical. There is one kill that is like mostly CGI, and it's the one kind of lame kill in the movie. I'm actually not in that camp. I think, visual effects are a tool in a tool belt, but there is that one that kind of sticks out as like, that wasn't that good a kill, because it was mostly CGI. The rest of them are aces, really, really good, and there's a good clip of satisfying, near cartoonish but not quite cartoonish violence. And then there's stuff like there's a character who's a great character, but he gets like a couple lines that are like breaking the fourth wall. They almost wanted to. They knew a new Scream was coming out, so they're like, let's make it meta. And there's like a couple like meta lines in here that really kind of almost break the sense of your sense of disbelief, or break the kind of illusion of like why do the characters know they're in a horror movie? And it really, I think there's only like one line I can think of, but it so sticks in my craw. It's like, why is that even in there? That I mention it because I'm a loser on the internet. Yeah, the central question of this video is Freaky worth renting? I would say 100%. I really, really enjoyed it. Not often that you get a movie like this that understands every genre it's playing in, and I think that's really emblematic in the performances, like the slasher, and the reason that horror fans go to conventions and get like autographs from someone like Kane Hodder or Ted White, or is that there's a physicality to these slashers. There's like almost like a Three Stooges-esque, or like almost silent film acting, physical comedy to them, that both of these actors get a chance to express. And like when Catherine Newton has first been possessed by the mind of this serial killer, it's so funny. Like these little physical comedy bits that they do. It's like $20, which sounds like an investment, but I watched this with my wife, and while I wouldn't really call this a gateway horror movie, it's like a cousin to the gateway horror movie. It's like a reach across the aisle horror movie. I'll call it that. Like it's a horror movie where horror fans will 100% enjoy it, and then the people in their families, or the people they're married to, who are not horror fans, will be able to sit down and enjoy it. And that's just a nice experience. Like I can't grab my wife and be like, oh, sit down, we're gonna watch Jeff Lieberman's Just Before Dawn, and then like this kind of pretty serious, pretty scary, pretty like cruel slasher movie that I love. She will like probably not be vibing with it as much as she's vibing with something like Freaky, that is like a kind of spoonful of sugar helping the buckets of gore go down. It is really close to being a gateway horror movie. I think it's the kind of movie that teens would love. I wish there were theaters, because I would have loved to see this in a theater. I think it would have played really well with a crowd. But this is the next best thing. This week's book recommendation is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson, and it is thematically a lot like Freaky. It is a story about a young woman who may or may not become a danger to those around her, may or may not have supernatural forces acting upon her in order to basically become a stronger person. They're thematically the same, but they're very different. This is kind of a Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale society that our main character lives in, and it's patriarchal and theocratic and really oppressive, and you get the feeling that there are other places in the world that are not quite as bad as this. The whole city is bordered by these forbidden woods, these dark woods that everyone knows not to go into because there are people living out there, and there are actually witches living out there. And there is a divide between the haves and the have-nots. Our main character, she is definitely in the have-nots category. There's a semi-romantic subplot where she starts to like the son of the prophet who's this old guy who's the leader of this city. He's taken a bunch of wives. The reason she is one of the have-nots, the reason she is kind of looked down upon in society is partially because she has witchcraft in her bloodline. She has this is a society that's burned all their witches, and she unwittingly, maybe through a curse placed on her by her own mother, starts biblical plagues happening in the city, and then she has to try to find a way to stop the plagues from happening. She has to find a way to kind of reverse the curse, and all the while she's having to do it like secretly because she doesn't want to be accused of witchcraft and all this stuff. And if that description sounds young adult, if that sounds like a YA novel, this book is not YA. It is not marketed as YA. It is marketed in the adult section of the bookstore. But I also think, and I do not mean this as any kind of slight or any kind of critique, I think that you could just take this book and reshelve it in the YA section, and it would be like people would enjoy it just as much. It really is one of those books that feels like it has crossover and feels like the adult moniker, the adult label, is really just a matter of marketing. You've probably seen this. It's got a beautiful cover. It's everywhere. And to be quite honest, it was the kind of book where I was like, I wasn't quite sure if it was for me. I got the audiobook. For the first few chapters, I was back and forth being like, is this going to be something I enjoy? Is this going to end up being something like The Village, where there is no supernatural thread at all? It's not. There is an explicitly supernatural bend in this story, and it does come pretty early, and then it builds and builds and builds, and it ends in this kind of phantasmagoria of supernatural action. But I think that's kind of like some of the best entertainment, or some of the best books, some of the best movies start like that, or at least for me, where I look at it and I say, I don't know that that's quite for me. I don't know that that's my thing. I don't know if I will enjoy that. Because it's not exactly in my wheelhouse, exactly in my interests. And I think that's so much harder for an author, for a filmmaker, to get you interested in a story that you initially are a little skeptical, like, oh, I don't know if this is my thing. I don't know if I'll enjoy this. And I think through dint of superior storytelling, superior writing, like pulling you in little by little into something that you didn't think you were going to enjoy. Not that I ever enter something with my arms crossed. Not that I ever I want to especially if you're buying a book, especially if I'm renting a movie, especially if I'm buying a DVD. I want to enjoy all the media I consume. It just doesn't work like that. We know that a lot of the time you don't like things, but I think that's, to me, the things that stick in my mind and the real hits are things that are where I enter in a little bit leery, a little bit like, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this. But this is Handmaid's Tale plus Dagger's the Witch plus kind of Hunger Gamesy, because it has this world building to it, and it has this YA flavor to it. But I really, really enjoyed The Year of the Witching, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Even if you don't think it's going to be your thing, because I think you'll be surprised. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I've got plenty of other more movie and book pairings over there. Don't forget stocking stuffer, guys. Premium stocking stuffer right here. It has to be a pretty big stocking, but grab Clown in the Cornfield wherever you get books. I will put links in the description. Thank you for everyone who has supported this book. Thank you so much. Video Night, Tribesman, Summer Job, Exponential, Mercy House, First When You Expect, Zero Lives Remaining. I have a ton of other books. If you've read Clown in the Cornfield and you enjoyed it, and you're like, oh, when's your next book, Adam? Read the other ones first. We'll talk about next book soon. Very soon there will be an announcement about a next book. But check these out, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next week. Next week, I've been talking about a lot of new stuff. I talked about Possessor like 2 videos ago, which is another VOD movie that I thought was well worth renting. And we're going to talk about the 70s. We're going to talk about a movie I really love from the 70s. And we'll talk about a new edition of it, whether it's worth buying or not.